I'm William. Come with me while we check out the beast of a sump that runs the BRS 360. There's a lot that goes into keeping a huge SPS reef like this thriving, so today we'll dig into the inner workings of this tank and some of the things that I do to ensure it stays healthy. While this tank began life 5 years ago, it really came together last year when we decided to add all these huge coral colonies. These all came from the Red Sea 750 that was in the hallway, which quickly became overgrown with huge SPS colonies that we couldn't really bear to cut apart. Moving these colonies over came with its own challenges though. Somewhere along the way, acro-eating flatworms were accidentally introduced into the 750, and we were aware that we would have to do something drastic to combat them. While our attempt of a high concentration Bayer pesticide dip did have the effect of removing a vast majority of the flatworms, it unfortunately didn't eradicate them entirely, and it had the side effect of browning out these colonies. Thankfully, the corals have been making a speedy recovery and are quickly on their way to filling in the tank. While I still have to manage the flatworms, they aren't causing ruin to the tank, but that's a story for another video. I want to show you the gear on this beast and what I do to keep it running. Let's start over here on the far end of the sump. This is where the water comes in from the display through these 1.25" pipes that are plumbed through the wall. Adjusting these valves allows me to make the internal overflow in the display completely silent. From there, it goes into the biggest roller mat I've ever seen. This huge roller is built into the Dreambox sump and works by using a capacitive non-contact proximity switch, which basically means the sensor that makes the roller mat turn never comes in contact with the water. The less electronics in your tank, the better. Another great feature of this roller is the isolated and enclosed used roll compartment. This holds in all the nasty smells of a used roll, which is vital for us here as the sump sits right at the entrances to our office. Other than replacing the giant roll about once every 3 months, I occasionally have to clean off the surfaces that the roll passes over, and I also like to clean the viewing panels to watch the satisfying rolling action. That's basically the only maintenance the roller mat requires, which is why it's one of my favorite filtration methods. After flowing through the polishing fleece, the water moves into this large chamber that I consider a sort of multi-use chamber. The main thing I like to use this chamber for is to try out new products that I find interesting and want to learn more about. One product that I'm currently messing with is the nanotech anaerobic blocks from MaxSpec. The concept is fascinating, and they look like they'd be a good space-saving option for hosting anaerobic heterotrophic bacteria that aid in the denitrification process, like the bacteria in our sand bed. I've used one of these in our tank for about 6 months, and while the tank is more stable, it's probably more likely due to the added filtration and consistent auto water changes. I'm gonna add another one of these blocks to bump it up to the recommended amount for this system size and keep playing with this product. In the chamber with the anaerobic block is also currently a juvenile purple tang. This is actually a great holding spot for fish as it's relatively dim and holds endless amounts of copepods and amphipods. I won't be keeping this little guy in here for long, but he certainly seems to be enjoying himself for now. Next up is the refugium and reactor. A while back, all the Chaeto in here melted away when I accidentally bottomed out the nutrients in the system. Thankfully, the tank has bounced back, so today I'll add some new Chaeto to the refugium. I found that a gyre attached to the back center makes the perfect flow to turn this tumbleweed of a Chaeto into a nice round ball over time. Above the Chaeto is a freshwater version of the A360X, controlled by our Apex. This light runs opposite the tank's lighting schedule, as doing so helps stabilize the pH in the tank. The pH is definitely a concern in this tank and all tanks in our office, as places like an office will typically have elevated levels of carbon dioxide, which leads to lowered pH in your water. Right next to the Chaeto is a media reactor. This dual reactor is a newer addition and in my opinion was the catalyst to stabilizing the system. I like to run phosphorus alongside ROX carbon in the reactor. The ROX carbon is a quick-acting carbon that I like to use in conjunction with ozone, primarily to clean up any discoloration in the water. A phosphate removal media like phosphorus is basically necessary for this system since it's a very high bioload system and maintaining a lowered phosphate level for acropora is challenging. The phosphorus in specific is great because it's a resin-based phosphate remover, which means it's longer lasting and slower to act than granular ferric oxide or GFO. A slower absorption of phosphates leads to further stability of the system as a whole. These Royal exclusive reactors function great and have a huge capacity, but they do have the downside of being a bit unwieldy and difficult to open when it comes time to replacing the media within. Having a wash basin or utility sink to work with them makes it way easier. I'll go ahead and get these cleaned up and replace the media. So, the skimmer. This tank has had several skimmers throughout its life, but we settled on this Era Aqua skimmer for now, for one reason and one reason alone. This skimmer has a very innovative way to turn itself into a recirculating skimmer. By turning either knob on the side where it intakes water, The skimmer changes from drawing in new water to recirculating or re-skimming the water already inside the skimmer body. This means that the water itself has a longer contact time within the skimmer, and the water exiting the skimmer will be even cleaner as it's had more time to be filtered. Traditionally, recirculating skimmers are larger units with 2 pumps and are impractical for most reefers. That's why I really like this one. It fits right in the footprint of any other skimmer and carries most of the features of a full-size recirculating skimmer. The recirculating design becomes even more impactful when you add ozone to the mix. I run this ozone generator for 2 hours in the middle of the night because I find it to be the safest option, and after doing some testing, we didn't really find any noticeable benefits to running it for longer periods of time. Since the water has a longer contact time within the skimmer itself, so does the ozone, meaning it becomes even more efficient at oxidizing the molecules in the water to improve the clarity. This ozone generator, in conjunction with the ROX carbon, keeps this water crystal clear. That freshly skimmed water gets sucked up by 2 large Red Dragon return pumps and heads back into the display, but not before going through the 80-watt Pentair UV sterilizer. With the amount of tangs, aka ick magnets in the tank, this sterilizer is essential in keeping them happy and healthy. Thankfully, the maintenance on one of these is really as simple as just replacing the bulb every year or so. Up on the wall, above the UV sterilizer, is our Tridents. I was very excited to get this Trident NP installed, probably a bit too excited though. When I installed the shelf it would sit on, I wasn't even thinking of the Trident's requirements and mounted it way too high. That's an easy enough fix though. I got a cabinet to house both Tridents and will mount it lower to accommodate for the Trident's intake needs. This lower Trident is constantly testing our alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, and I use the controlled dosing feature on the apex to control the dosing of the 4-part Triton additive. On average, this tank uptakes around 65 milliliters per day of each of the 4 additives, but I've been watching this number slowly climb, and it may be nearing the time to look at some other dosing methods to assist with the liquid additives. While that's everything that's visible on the sump, there are some hidden components, such as our whole auto water change system we store in the BRS warehouse and pump through the ceiling, as well as the auto top-off RODI unit and its reservoir next to the sump. These are all controlled by the Apex system that lives under the tank itself. While I do have most of the Apex probes installed, the most important part of this Apex setup is definitely the leak detectors. This tank is huge, with lots of powerful pumps and lots of moving water. Any loose fitting, crack in some PVC, or any other small issue could quickly become a big issue. The sump is in a public hallway and has loads of traffic coming and going. Because of that, I've set up leak detectors all over the place with push notifications in case of an accident. That about wraps it up for how I filter this beast. How would you guys do it?